Hi all. So you've got me, Fraser Edwards, kind of leading this panel up for about, I think, half an hour if we're running to time. So Checks briefly is a trust payment decentralized ID infrastructure for people, companies, agents, you name it. Whole aim is just make sure that whole space is trustworthy. So before we get started, probably as we go around, yeah, introduce yourselves and what you're up to.
Hi. So my name is Iskender. I'm the Chief Product Officer at Eliza Labs. Eliza Labs is behind the Eliza OS framework. It's a TypeScript framework that basically lets you wrap an LLM, give it tools, and let it go do stuff.
I'm Neil, founder of this company called Radio. It's a parallel EVM powered by GPU for autonomous AI.
Good morning, folks. My name is Jared Barnes. I'm our head of founder success at Near. If you're not familiar with Near, we're a layer one blockchain solely focused on essentially empowering this idea of user-owned AI and allowing everyday individuals to run private and powerful AI workloads in a user-owned way.
Hi, my name is Leah. I'm the founding partner and CSO of BitGPT. We are an AI framework that's privacy preserving and allows for local execution on device, meaning we have a modular framework in which we can work with any layer one, but any existing AI companies as well, in order to build the foundation and privacy preserving foundation for the AI agent economy.
Cool. So getting started, there's already been a bit of a theme with the introductions, but starting off with more of a, I guess, philosophical question: who should own the data? And off the back of that, how do you see compensation for that data, whether it's being kind of generated, owned, working, and points for if you've actually seen it in practice already?
I don't think I have like a hot take on this other than like, I'm not sure users care, like, like where data is stored. I think the question is like, what does the experience and access levels look like? So yeah, the question was like, what is the
Yeah, who should own the data?
should
Are
own
we
the data?
taking a not your keys, not your crypto kind of angle to this,
Yeah.
or to your point, do people give a shit?
Yeah, I think maximal vision of who should own the data is like the user has like given permissions to their agents. The agents own and like operate the data, taking requests and like monetize it maybe on your behalf. But like use like the normal person's cognitive load is like not to think about how to like balance their data across like the requests of all these like networks and like applications that they use.
For centralized AI, but we definitely don't know how the companies are really manipulating the data. But for crypto, I think give the users a chance, or companies like us a chance to give the transparency to the data for the data to the users. I think it's a matter of how we can gonna do that. I won't judge the question, but for us, right, that's what we are supposed to solve for the transparency of the data. It belongs to the user.
Yeah, so at BitGPT, we basically see data in two steps. So the first one is the point of origin. So I'm a user, I'm giving or I'm delegating my data to an AI agent. Thus, for that instance, we allow for local execution on the phone. So essentially, we distill large language models down to small language models. That vector storage allows for you to do all your execution on the device, especially your intents, for example, do not land in the public mempool. Now, then there's a second load of data, right? Post the inference, which is like, how is that data or the data on how the model performed given to a larger model in order for us to enhance the quality of it? And that's where we then add a tokenization element to it. I think it is important that the data stays and is owned at the point of origin, which is the user. And I would argue that with the AI agent economy, people will start to question what is the cost of convenience, and they will start to care who owns that data, especially, if we're going to be delegating our entire private life.
Oh, do you have something?
I would add to that. Go ahead. Look forward. A part of I think that's great. Like I think that's actually the future we should strive towards where like yeah, user delegates rights, but I think a part of the challenge is like your data is already in the LLM, right? So it's like whether or not you intended on it training on you, you're in there and it's like doing its thing with you. So like at some point like our data is already inside these systems and like we're delegating like rights to future it's like futures. But I think the challenge is like our data is already in there and like these tools now that represent us are kind of being widely distributed. And so I think there's a world where maybe it has passed. I'm not saying it has, but like there's, we're here today because it trained on all of us already, right? So
I think there's a lot of valid points. And maybe just zooming out, right? If you kind of look at all layers that actually involve AI workloads, if you start with just the hardware layer, I think the first thing we have to zoom out and realize, anyone here have a MacBook? Show of hands. Right. So I just bought a MacBook M4 Max or M4 Pro. Right. So essentially that's like 128 gig memory. You can run a 70 billion parameter model easily, like get really strong tokens per second. And so I think there's going to be a strong argument over the next 6 to 12 months of, do you even need cloud for the workflows that you're trying to build? Right. If you're not familiar with NVIDIA and their Project Digits, essentially they put like the new Blackwell chip in a consumer device. And so you're going to basically have the latest NVIDIA chip for $3,000. Right, and run even larger models locally at home. So there's, I think, the first hardware layer to acknowledge. The second is open source models are getting even more performant. And I think the bitter lesson that we have learned at Near is that the base model for any workload that you're doing matters a lot. The difference of performance that you get from a 7 billion to a 70 billion parameter model is significant in terms of quality of outcome for any agentic workflow. And so just between those two trends alone, there's an argument there that yes, we may have crossed perhaps the time horizon of LLMs today on, data ownership, but I think there's real opportunity. I think the second then premise is to really understand, where centralized AI is going. I think we were sitting here last year. I mean, I was on panels last year, and it was the argument of decentralized AI versus centralized AI, right? We're going to take down the big guy. Well, I mean, OpenAI released some data. They have 400 million weekly actives. That's 5% of the world uses ChatGPT. I think that's a little bit steep. And so I think it's recognizing what are the areas and slices of the pie that we could actually have data ownership and not just think about, my Twitter data. Because the reality is that's actually relatively low quality data, right? Social data, the half-life of that is very short. I can't really use that for training a sophisticated model. The high value data are actually your daily interactions. And so if you think about it, if you own that locally on device, right? I now have provenance and sovereignty over that data because I have really performant hardware and I'm actually doing all my high value actions there. That's a high quality and high value data set that could be monetized in a variety of different ways.
And that was exactly where I was about to go. Where do you think that commercialization is going to go? Like, where is it? If it's internal to your device, is there any monetization at all? Or yeah, how do you guys look at that?
Yeah, sorry for the TED talk here, guys. I get fired up on this stuff. I'll stop talking because these panelists are way smarter than me. But I think the opportunity then becomes, let's assume you have high value action on your local device, anonymized local data, right? Because if you think about it, like ChatGPT operator, basically any action you take on the internet is training data for a computer vision model, right? So like full stop right there. Number one. And so now that you actually have that, that becomes high value data that for the kind of the next wave or next generation of data marketplaces, you could really think about. So I'll stop there because there's a like rabbit hole we could go down.
Anyone else have any different views? That's a no.
Someone's got a
No, I would second that. I think, to your point, I think we're having a paradigm shift in an economic sense. We're moving from an automation economy to a delegation economy. And I think the core difference here is like, yes, 400 million users are using ChatGPT. They are prompting ChatGPT. The difference with an AI agent is it almost will start telling you what services you want, right? It becomes your kind of solver in that instance. And I think I'm going to try and draw the parallels between AI lingo and sort of crypto lingo or blockchain lingo. But what you're alluding to with the operator agent having all that data, that's the same as the intent problem that we have, and MEV and front running and all of that jazz, right? So I think there is an inherent value in this new data set that is now coming, which is like, okay, one thing is me using an AI agent and I telling what to do. The other thing is essentially an AI agent becoming a long-term partner in my tech stack. We've been talking a lot to government partners, for example. Governments want to maintain sovereignty, right? They do not want to deploy themselves either on an OpenAI, an American model, or a Chinese model. They want a sovereign framework where they can actually use that. And so we've been talking a lot with governments in order to deploy that. And then I do think you'll unlock a new wave of users as well, which is maybe going to be prompted and pioneered by a top-down deployment, whether it's companies saying, okay, we want privacy-preserving sovereign AI models because we don't want to hand over our IP, or the same on a governmental level as well. And I think that's where commercialization aspect is relevant. It's actually saying, okay, the AI agent economy will operate obviously on steroids. We're going to have way more transactions per day, hopefully, on chain. And with that, obviously, the data, the training data, we do synthetic data abstraction, to your point. So at BitGPT, and my team founded SingularityNet. So we've been on this mission for the last 7 years, right? We allow the execution to happen on the device. The intent is not shown to anybody. And then we do synthetic data abstraction and do sort of fine-tuning inference. And then that gets sent to the larger model, collective model, and then you earn tokens on that. And I do think it's exciting because we get to find a new value for tokens, in which a token value accrues maybe more like an NVIDIA stock per usage of AI, instead of the constant like, oh, we've been in a bull market or in a bear market. And, that's a very, exhausting narrative as well.
I think like the way I think about it, it's almost like a freemium model. So the great part about open source is you get open source models, you get open source everything. It's actually quite easy to make your own. And so like the way I think about it, that means if there's like millions of models, there'll be trillions of agents. But if you want to do something like exceptional, kind of like what she outlined, like then I think that's when you go into the premium route where you're like, well, I need privacy, I need these guarantees, like I need these things to like hit whatever like target I have. So I think like the freemium model is kind of like how I think about it. Like in general, it's a commodity. And then if you want to do something super dope, then you got to dive in.
And then to go down a rabbit hole of something that both you, Leah, and you, Iskender, kind of mentioned. So when then looking at permissioning, privacy, delegation, access, how are you managing that around that data? Especially, I think you touched on having some on the private device, some that goes up to a generalized model. How do you think about that kind of data access, delegation, permissioning? And also, how will that then work in a, say, multi-agent or cross-agent framework model?
Yeah. Well, I think this is really why we're talking about decentralized AI agents, right? I think that's the first time, and I always said I work in blockchain, not in crypto, because I never really bought into the fact that TradFi is so corrupted that we need DeFi. But I have since, 7 years ago that I studied algorithmic bias and I have a background in AI safety, I have been investigating blockchain as a solution to mitigate a lot of the risk problems of AI. And so I think that's what we have here as an opportunity as an industry to really show for the first time the feature set is actually better on kind of on a decentralized model. And it is that. It's data provenance. It's being able to understand the epistemological origin of reasoning. That's the next kind of wave of AI agents as well. And I think that's really where we have an opportunity as an industry to create a movement around that.
Completely agree. It's a multi-layered problem, right? I think the reality is, in order to solve this, we have to play at minimum 5 to 10 year games, not 6 to 12-month games. I think decentralized AI has been playing 6 to 12-month games. Hyper-financialization has stifled innovation, in my opinion. And so to solve this, I think fundamentally, first, you need some way for agents to communicate with each other, right? And you think about, if anyone here has used deep research from OpenAI or Gemini, the system cards release that was over 100 agents communicating with each other, right, to get kind of the output of deep research. And so if we think about reaching feature parity with that level of execution in a decentralized world, you need a really sophisticated agent-to-agent communication protocol with permissioning. I know Okta, if you've ever used like two-factor authentication, they're actually open sourcing their kind of agent permissioning in the same way you'd share Google Doc. How do you think about agents kind of sharing information in a permissioned way? So there's some deep infra challenges that I think are very much open problems that are yet to be solved, and I think can be solved, but it will take truly a perspective of trying to play a 5 to 10 year game.
I think just jumping on that as well. So you've got Okta coming in with, because it's their space, right? Authentication is something they've done for decades, and they are operating on that timescale. That's the way that they operate, and it's now looking at, yes, new tech, but it's stuff that they've done for a long time. I don't know if anyone's tracking, but also Anthropic came out with a model context protocol recently. So that's obviously looking down the same route in terms of permissioning. There's also, I think, a decentralized identity foundation diff paper with MIT looking at using kind of verifiable credentials crossing over with agents, and how you can have therefore delegated authority, how you can have permissioning over data access, as well as being able to have mutual recognition between agents, but having kind of some, I guess, independent protocol which manages agent-to-agent communication, authentication, and authorization is going to be crucial.
Yeah, it's so critical. I think that this also happens on chain in a transparent way because I think there are a lot of the legislative issues that governments worry about, which is, who takes liability with an AI agent? Where's the proof of personhood? Who actually issued the transaction? Was it sort of a call from an agent to an agent, or was it the human signatory or a multi-signatory process? And I think in that, like the only way to even have the chance to create legislation that has an answer is to say, okay, we have those data points in the first place. The problem with a centralized network is we won't know what those AI agents are fed. Quite literally, like if you have the child, you don't know if it's being biased, if it's being skewed, and then it becomes like it's like social media, this third wave of that. You had media, you had social media. Now it's literally whispering in your ear, and I think that is a future that we as an industry have to kind of try and mitigate and solve.
Yeah, I kind of second on that. I used to work for a company called Twilio, where talk about two-factor authentication. They are the one of the best. But when you talk about centralized service, the high throughput VR has been handling, compare that to a blockchain. Nowadays, what we can handle, there's a big gap. That's where, we are ready, trying to achieve a little bit better from a parallel EVM and GPU acceleration perspective to really cater to what are the AIs are driving towards to for all these multiple agents coming up, handling the data at the same time.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that I think if we want to see like agents at scale, like leveraging our data, that's gonna require a lot of trust. And like the systems today that I think can give you the most trust are like rooted in cryptography and like leverage smart contracts. So I don't think anyone has like a better tool belt for these problems than us in crypto. To me, that's what's like really encouraging about decentralized AI.
I think we kind of bled into one of the follow-up topics, which was how do we avoid these biases? Is it effectively we're answering that with like writing audit trails to Ledger, making sure permissioning is managed on Ledger? Like, I mean, that basically feels like we've answered the next question where we're kind of going on to, unless anyone has different views.
Yeah, I'm just gonna double down on this because my thesis at university was algorithmic bias against gender and race, and it's this how I found blockchain. And I found immutability is actually problematic too if it's left without an antidote, right? And that's why I like decentralized AI as a sort of abstraction context layer on top. Um, but yeah, it's crucial that we have an insight into what's going on. Even if we delegate things, we want to be able to go back and understand the reasoning process. And I think that's becoming more incumbent now. And I was in Paris for the AI Action Summit like 10 days ago, and I remember the COO of OpenAI was asked, can an AI feel empathy? And it said no, but it can demonstrate it, which is pretty much the definition of a narcissist. So what I'm saying is it was just an ironic process of like these models will take an intimate position in our lives. And that is where you hand over sovereignty and autonomy. It's not that you shouldn't have a relationship with it, but if you completely have that power imbalance of way too much information about myself and zero, and add to that the fact that most people don't even have self-awareness about themselves in the first place, then you have an AI agent that understands you more profoundly than you understand yourself. And I think it's both a social movement that we're propagating, but also now is really where I think the infrastructural efforts that we've been doing have a moment to shine to your point, being able to handle this at scale.
I think just kind of real quick hit here for builders in the room. The short-term opportunity right now is tracing and observability for your agents. If you've never used LangGraph Studio or Weaviate by Weights and Biases, what that enables you to do is understand the reasoning and thought process of your agents, right? We see a lot of builders who are saying, hey, I'm building autonomous agents that can transact on your behalf. We're doing kind of automated portfolio rebalancing or one-click DCA. That's great. But the reality is, over time, you as a builder are going to want to know the patterns of transactions and the patterns of agent decision making of why that agent chose to do that, right? So really, really important if you're trying to build production grade systems to have tracing and observability as a starting point to really understand the how decisions are made by your agents.
Yeah, sorry, just to add to that, I think another opportunity in the same camp is like evaluation agents. So actually, can we create models or agents, sorry, that investigate themselves, that are self-reflective? We create an evaluation system as an industry as well. That's why it's so important that we work together. And I think now everyone's a little bit overwhelmed with like the sea of AI agents and, based on a Twitter feed and a product demo on Twitter, you can't really demarcate like, what's a wrapper, what isn't, how are you different, how are you not. I've had to answer that question to investors ad nauseum. And it is in that secondary investigation, what is the fabric, what is the framework, what is the team behind it, how are they doing all these execution processes, that the quality really is observed. And I think I would encourage that as a community, especially as this collaborative community that checks itself constantly, that we create frameworks for evaluation as well and guide that.
Yeah, and one approach that like I think like attracted me to Eliza Labs around this topic is like if there's a world with millions of models, trillions of agents, it doesn't require us to depend on somebody getting it right. It requires all of us to collaborate and get it right enough. And so I think the opportunity for us to like build these systems that check each other to make sure that these systems are executing in the collective good is actually the aggregate mission for everybody, in the room. So to me, that's I think a better approach than like hoping that one of the bigger players will get it right. It's like we could just take the open source stuff and do it better ourselves.
Then going back to the audit trail permit, like again, kind of going down that rabbit hole again, how do you all view the balance between making sure you have that kind of public audit trail versus maintaining privacy for a user? What goes on Ledger? What doesn't go on Ledger? How does this cross over with, say, ZKPs, homomorphic encryption, TEs? Like, how do you see the balance between making sure you have enough to know that the agent is doing exactly what you expect it to be doing, whilst not exposing any kind of personal data of the individual to a wider audience?
Yeah, I would just say like off-chain compute and then like some sort of on-chain execution is probably like the final recipe. Like the reason why that makes a lot of sense is like depending on your use case or the constraints you have, like you could be doing all kinds of stuff, off chain, and that needs to be okay. But we do want to be able to verify that what you did was correct. So I think, I think ZK has like a role to play. I'm not sure how that will work commercially because like if you want to do stuff on device, ZK is still like quite prohibitive, but that's improving. Um, but yeah, I would just, s- yeah.
Well, we have been doing Ziki for 3 years, right? For Ziki, right now, actually, you can do client-side verification, but the matter of how you actually put all those in onto the blockchain is questionable. Like the interactions between your off-chain verification and how many interactions do you need to interact with the blockchains are pretty heavy loaded workload. The other thing is we have seen a lot of companies right now in order to trying to achieve the autonomous is they actually trying to bring some of the AI inferencing onto the blockchain. But right now, the performance of the blockchain is still a big question mark there. So hopefully one of the parallel EVM can achieve that. Hopefully Redu can be one of those.
No, I think it comes down to what problem you're trying to solve, right? So if you think about it from a consumer lens, if you have a Coinbase wallet, you have kind of your standard Coinbase interface, but you also have the opportunity to use Coinbase Advanced, which is a pretty sophisticated trading interface. And I think we're talking about a very different technology, but similar paradigm in that you have your basic use case, whatever you are trying to use for the client or use at the interface layer. Then you have actually the privacy preservation deep infra under the hood. 90% of people likely don't want to see that front and center. But there are 10%, and most of them are B2B enterprises who will pay a lot of money, who do want to see that, right? And so I think as for the builders in the room, perhaps approaching it in that lens might help you think about how to best show what it is people need to see, because so much of this is about trust. And my stance is the ultimate moat in this space is user trust. You can lose it so fast, but if you gain it and you have it, man, that's compelling. But ultimately, I think it comes down to what do you show people when?
Yeah, and I think just to add to that, there's two lenses, right? The user perspective, which obviously wants quick and good quality transactions. And you know what? A lot of the blockchain infra problems could probably be solved with AI agents, right? I always say every point of friction, if you is an opportunity for an AI agent to solve it. But I think that's a kind of moment in time issue, which is like even for us, we asked ourselves when was the right moment to launch our first agents. We just did this week. But of course, like, people might be expecting what they already get in a decentralized framework. So I think education is critical for that as well. And sorry, I lost my train of thought. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, like that's going to be how we educate the users and how we build in the openness and sorry, on the wallet side, that's what I'm going to say. We've been talking, for example, to wallets a lot. So wallets can implement our SDK. And if you think about it, the entire marketing space in Web3 never got the benefits of Web2 marketing because it inherently resided on, okay, I'm going to mine all your data, thus I'm going to be able to personalize. And I think the cusp here is that off-chain doesn't mean on cloud. If we can have off-chain mean local execution on your device, it's privacy preserving. However, it unlocks these new features, which are personalization. You know, AI eats UI for breakfast, so we might start having dynamic UIs as well. And I think that's really an advantage that we have here.
Before we go to questions, for all of you, scariest agent you've come across so far or expect to see, and then a more positive view of the future. Say both.
Yeah, okay, this is about to be a therapy session. So I'm personally terrified of drones, and that was before I realized that you could put LLMs in there and you could give them communication channels. And then I was like, holy shit, like a horde of fucking anyway.
It's gonna be like that. It's gonna be like Black Mirror.
Yeah,
That bit where they
it's
all
terrifying, like the coordination opportunity there, and like I don't know. I find that personally terrifying. That's just me.
Me, it's pretty simple because nowadays a lot of hacking happening. And imagine if I using some AI agent model trying to do the tradings for on behalf of myself, and someone touch the code base without letting me know. That's something really horrible for me.
Hopefully this works. So the one I'm most scared. Man,
It's breaking. That's what I think you tried to.
yeah, gosh. I'm actually most terrified of voice agents. So I spent this past weekend at the 11 Labs AI voice hackathon.
Oh, that stuff is cool.
It was really cool. Slightly scary because I think we've passed the Turing test with voice agents, meaning you don't actually know you're talking to AI. And this didn't really hit me until my flight was delayed here. I was flying Delta. And so I was talking to one of the Delta agents who I thought was a human, but it was actually an AI. Because it gave me a survey at the end and it was, thank you, this conversation has been moderated by AI. I'm like, wow. And so I think there are some implications of that we have not yet considered. Obviously, it's great for profit and cutting costs in call centers. But man, you want to talk about an emotional relationship that could get real weird real fast.
Yeah, we don't have time to go into like, should agents always declare themselves?
Right.
Which is like,
Right.
yeah, that's a whole other thing.
Yes.
Yeah, so
Yeah, I'm going to answer the question on a more philosophical level. I think what worries me the most about the AI agents, and I believe a lot in Conway's law, a mathematician who said that a product is essentially a mirror of its builders. And what worries me, especially being who I am, a woman in this space, is the builders behind everything. AI agents, blockchain, like what does decentralization matter if we don't have diversity, if we don't have equity, if the people who are building evaluation models, the people that are checking the AI agents don't even problematize sexism, don't even problematize racism, right? And so like that is my call to action, to actually say that this is an opportunity to invite people, cross-pollinate people that are artists, that maybe have a different background, a philosophical background, a psychological background. Like those professions are critical in how we choose to build AI in any way, because we always like to have this like us versus AI dialogue. And in that, we forget that we are its birth parents. It is inherently something we are birthing and we are taking decisions on. And so like we have to take that accountability and responsibility. And so like that's my call to action, to just hire more women, hire more diverse people, and just like, that's it.
cool. And extending the kind of positive message, your blue sky like hope for where agents go.
I think agents have the opportunity to be the technology of liberation. I think there's like an opportunity for all of us to like explore who we are and what we want to become in like a way that no previous generation has. And I hope that generates like a lot more empathy between all of us.
Well, I hope my company will only have one person like me.
Oh,
Yeah.
finally.
Yeah. All the other people are just agent, but they are interacting with multiple agent on a blockchain, like receive the income for my company. so that they can self-survive. At the same time, they can actually automatically getting more powerful AI computation resources based on the revenue they actually achieve to allocate more resources for on behalf of themselves, so that my company can grow bigger and bigger.
Well said. So I'm also going to share a philosophical answer. And I think the biggest challenge for us as humans in this age of AI is how will we spend our time? I am personally already at a point where I automate a majority of my workflow. Somebody asked me, "Hey, Jerry, can you do this product requirements doc for this new product?" Sure. Let me just throw it in my O1 Pro mode and let it take care of me. And then it frees up time. I think we as humans are also addicted to busyness, probably Americans more than others. But then the question becomes, what do we do with that time that's freed up by all these agents? And how do we spend that? So I think that's a real interesting opportunity for us as humans, not AI.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, in the most utopian way, if we create this AI agent economy in a privacy preserving manner, then I would love to see it open up more time, obviously, for us to look at the things that cannot be standardized, that cannot be automated because they don't have a pattern logic to them, that are a lot more about, inquiring about ourselves and the universe and nature and all those things. And then I think on a more tangible, like utility based level, I'm sure you guys have all had this issue when it comes to like hiring an EA, right? You want someone to do the menial tasks for you, but at the same time, you're used to your own standard and own way of doing things. And so I like this idea of being able to amplify myself even more. And I think at the end, like, centralized AI, which, by the way, has no idea about decentralized AI. I saw this again in Paris. I talked to the founder of Hugging Face, and his first answer was like, no, I don't know, blockchain. And by the way, that's not to call him out. This is to say that there's an inherent communication issue between these two industries. But more importantly, I lost my train of thought again. Sorry. But yeah, just to say that it's an empowerment message. It's the fact that if we can take away the risk and this like dystopian future that everyone's afraid of being substituted by AI, and instead you tell them like, look, you can literally have in your pocket your own lawyer, your own accountant, your own this, like that eradicates a lot of what creates imbalance in our society. Like, can you afford a lawyer or not? Can you afford a consultant or not? And so I would love to see that be something that actually democratizes us as a society and creates sort of more meritocratic values as well.
Just a tangible example of that. I think in the UK, someone created an agent, and all it does is automated fighting parking tickets where you had a legitimate claim. It's all it did, but it dropped the price from like £1,000 to engage a lawyer to like a couple of quid. And it's consistent. It wins cases, and it's good. And I think it's a very low key example, but it's a good example of it just lowered the price point significantly and democratized access to that service.
Especially in the US, where everything is so like it's not based on like access, whether you have a language barrier, a literacy barrier, all of these cost money. I'm European, obviously we don't have this issue so prominently, but I think it can really create empowerment for minority groups.
100%.
Yeah, I think if you're building that mindset's actually super useful because rather than thinking, how do I replace this? It's like, how do I augment this? And that's when you're actually going to find better results.
So I think we're almost at time. So calling Harry back up in a second, but just before we do, any final announcements or kind of anything that's coming from any of your projects in the near future that you want everyone in the room to be aware of?
Yeah, I'm going to do a nice shilling over here. We obviously launched our network. We launched it at the Binance Blockchain Week in October. We've now launched our first AI agent as a referential use case. But more importantly, I think what does differentiate us, because I've spoken to Ilya and people like Nir, etc., is we're not a layer one doing AI agents. We are a framework that has the modularity to work with, whether it's BNB chain, Solana, we've been talking to anyone. And so if you have a company that wants to embed AI, I'm sure everyone here is looking at what is my AI strategy within my blockchain company, then please come talk to me because we'd love to partner and provide that for you guys.
Yeah, echoing everything shared. Huge fan of Eliza. If you guys haven't checked it out, please do. Very much believe in their multi-chain future. We at Near very much believing in a multi-chain future. I was passionate about the topic of agent-to-agent communication because that is actually a new protocol we're going to launch here at ETH Denver. Marketing team is probably going to kill me, but if you go to aitp.dev, that is the AI transaction protocol that we have been working on over the past few months, really trying to solve this deeply rooted problem of how do agents communicate to each other in a decentralized world.
two small announcements. First is our community finally, our community finally bring the Eliza OS supporting our network. Second one is a lot of people asking why a lot of company want to bring AI inferencing onto blockchain. So our partner Azure Network will have a panel at 4:20. If you are interested on why he want to do that on radio, please come back.
Yeah, and for Eliza OS, right now we're working on multi-agent and making that much more powerful. So like scenario planning, kind of like orchestration, auth is going to be a huge problem for us to tackle as we discussed on the panel. But yeah, I encourage you to check out the framework. And if you're an agent dev and you want to talk more, I'll be over here for like 5 minutes after the panel.
Cool. And to close it up, on the check side, we're opening up a hack. Key part is bringing trust, verifiability across to AI, whether that is the supply chain of how code gets into these models, to your point around the attack, or how we allow VCs, credentials, data to get used inside these kind of models in a privacy-preserving way. One opportunity is we're working with a bunch of academics from the UK, more around that framework for verifiability, avoiding harms, avoiding biases. So with that, back to Harry.
Well,
Thank you all.
oh, thank you so much to Jared for avoiding the tech issues with such grace. But a huge round of applause for one wonderful talk.